If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. So Bill Maher getting a lot of attention for this rant he went on against the DSA on his program over the weekend. Played a clip of his riff on Francesca Hong, the DSA candidate for governor in Wisconsin, earlier in the program in discussion with Heather McDonald. But again, man on the left who talk about the bar being low, suggesting, as he did when he sat down with J.D. Vance, that if the DSA continues to be ascendant in the party to which he's affiliated, then his vote is in play. What does in play mean? You're either with the neo-Bolsheviks or you're not. What's to figure out? It sounds like he has it very much figured out. So what's the discussion? Is it like what Joe Manchin said on Face the Nation, where, yeah, of course we'll adopt their good ideas. What are their good ideas? How do you get fruit from a poisonous tree, Joe?
Heather, could you ever support a self-described socialist candidate?
No.
No way. My God, no.
And even if they have some good ideas?
Well, I support the good ideas, but how
what
can
are
you
the good
support
ideas?
some of the crazy stuff they're for? Have you seen their platform? They're for dismantling everything that we know, whether it be the structure of government, Congress itself, or the Senate they want to get rid of. And then they start talking about all the crazy things. No police, no this, no this, no that. Are you crazy? We want a crime-free area. We have to have police for that.
Yeah.
We want a strong defense. We want a strong border. But if Democrats can't say that, and they start lining up with the socialist demands of what you are to be a socialist, energy will be gone. There'll be no energy, okay? We have right now a tremendous amount of energy we're producing, and the world depends more on us than ever before. We can do more.
What do you mean if that happens? It's happening. It's not a eventuality. It's occurring. Take the good ideas. Name one. But Margaret Brennan is trying to run interference for DSA, as the D.C. press corps is, trying to muddy the waters on behalf of a DSA that speaks with clarity. I mean, there is nothing unclear about their positions. They're very proud of them. The D.C. press corps is trying to run said interference because they want these candidates to be successful, and they realize that the clarity may turn out to be box office poison in most jurisdictions. For example, DSA co-chairwoman Ashik Sadiq on abolishing prisons. Part of the platform.
Let's talk about the platform.
Sure.
You know, what's interesting is abolish the police is not in here.
The language that we actually have about the criminal justice system talks about how currently our police and prison system is stacked toward persecuting poor people and excusing rich people's crimes. I personally have no problem with having something called a prison be the place where people like that are kept if they can't be rehabilitated.
So why is abolish prisons the thing? Is it just that it is...
The language that we have in there is abolishing the police and prison system that protects capital over people. These horrible crimes that have been perpetrated by some of the most powerful people in society are being protected by this system, which is instead mostly going after people for, having some weed or for jumping a turnstile on the train.
Right. So we have gulags for political prisoners, but no prisons for people who break the law. Is that a fair summary? It is. Aber Quas, remember her? She was one of those victorious Mamdaniites a few weeks back, along with It Girl for this cycle for the DSA, Daralisa Chevalier. Again, very clear.
Immigrants that are living in fear of ICE every single day. What can we do to resist this? We are calling for abolishing ICE and agents who live to exceptionalize who gets to be part of this country. My parents were both undocumented, and I remember my parents speaking about what to do. Should they leave the country? Where should they hide if an ICE agent comes to the home?
And here in Illinois, we have, supposedly sort of mainstream candidates like Secretary of State Ali G, who announced for mayor of Chicago yesterday. But as Secretary of State, well, he's on the program. I mean, he's an empty vessel, but it's instructive where he thinks he needs to be in order to be viable.
You may have seen this video recently on social media. It shows an ICE agent confronting someone filming a vehicle and saying,
you can record all you want.
I am.
Change plates out every day.
Well, I have a big problem with that. You see, swapping out Illinois license plates on Illinois registered vehicles is illegal. And as
he's law and order all the way, except with the 1 in 5 CDL licenses that his office issued to illegal immigrants, according to the U.S. Department of Transportation. And Juliana Stratton, our lieutenant governor, and likely next senator to replace Saca Durbin, on with Major Garrett on ICE.
But what we saw with Operation Midway Blitz here in the city of Chicago and in the state of Illinois is we saw Border Patrol agents going down through downtown Chicago. We saw ICE agents in our communities after Donald Trump said that he was going after the quote unquote worst of the worst. But that's not who he went after. We saw tamale vendors and daycare providers, agents going into churches and places of business and even schools where we've saw a lot of activity. And so this is a time that I don't believe that this agency can be reformed. I believe that we need to start looking at what can we do with all of that money that that agency has, because what Donald Trump is doing is not about immigration. It's not about public safety. It's about trying to normalize the presence of the military on American soil. So let's really invest in a system that works for legal, to put people on a path to legal immigration. Invest in more immigration judges, make sure that we have community-based resources and social services, and not criminalize our immigrant neighbors.
Don't criminalize criminals. Abolish ICE and amnesty for all. I mean, that's Dara Lisa Chevalier. That's every other DSA. You can call yourself DSA or not DSA. I don't care what Ali G or Juliana Stratton calls himself. It's the same program. Same program. For more on all this, pleased to be joined again by our friend Rafael Mangual, Senior Fellow and Head of Research for the Manhattan Institute's Policing and Public Safety Initiative, and author of Criminal Injustice, What the Push for Mass Decarceration and Depolicing Gets Wrong, and Who It Hurts the Most. Rafael, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Great to be with you, Dan. How are you?
Good. Good to have you back. So, your reaction to, where this rhetoric, whether it's room temperature or a little bit more vituperative, where this ultimately leads when it comes to the demonization of ICE and the vilification of ICE officers and federal law enforcement agencies.
Yeah, I think ultimately it leads to a toxic politics. And eventually that rhetoric is going to get taken up by people who are going to take it to its logical conclusion. We just saw that in New York, just a couple of weeks ago with the most recent ICE-related attack outside the ICE headquarters in downtown Manhattan, where someone tried to light the building on fire and shoot people with what turned out to be an airsoft rifle with, he was armed with other weapons, right? I mean, this is what happens when you have people who, instead of talking about, enforcement actions as arrests, they call them kidnappings. They accuse the agency of operating, cruelly and ignore the fact that all they're doing is enforcing duly enacted immigration law that has been on the books for decades that is relatively mild compared to the global standard, which is something no one else wants to talk about. It's not as if, every country in the world is more happy to, allow their borders to be invaded and to allow their immigration laws to go unenforced. It's just not true. So when you have these politicians, using words like resistance and, lauding protesters who stand outside hotels that are housing ICE agents to keep them up all night and commend that behavior, it's only a matter of time until that gets taken to the next level.
It's interesting, too. I mean, this is on another topic, but I mean, it's related in terms of implication. Scott Galloway is a marketing professor at NYU, and he's a co-host of this podcast. He's an insufferable leftist prig. But he was one of those doxed, quote unquote doxed. He's on the Mamdani pied-à-terre tax list because he's got, a condo worth more than $1 million or suggested it might be. And he doesn't like it at all.
And I've been doxed.
You've been doxed? What? Tell me.
So I don't know if you've heard, but Mayor Mamdani has decided to release a list of the 950,000 residences with addresses and names that might be eligible for his pied-à-terre tax. I came out in favor of this tax. This is the definition. He's taken a legitimate source of tax revenue and he's turning it into a wanted poster. And the question I would have is, other than trying to identify and imply these people have done something wrong, and then 18 months after a healthcare CEO was executed in the street and then published the list, what is the upside here? Why is he doing this?
Mm-hmm. So he's very concerned about his public safety, but he's very unconcerned about the public safety of federal law enforcement officers who are being targeted with much more verve than Scott Galloway is.
That's exactly right. I mean, there's no principle here, right? There's no adherence to principle on the far left in America. It's merely about whether the operation in question serves their interest in the moment. And what happens is ultimately these actions end up hurting their own, right? They end up eating their own, but it also just undermines public trust, right? Because people who are looking at this, who are on the fence, who are normal people, are going to see this list and think, well, gee, is it really that good for the government to release the names of all of these people who haven't done anything wrong simply because they might be eligible to pay a tax? What is the point of that, if not demonization, right? Would the government support, for example, releasing the names and addresses of all of, the single individuals living in housing projects that are multi-bedroom units? Would the government be okay with releasing the names of people who have spent more than 10 years on the public dole? Right? No leftist would ever support that, and they would call it what it is, which is an attempt to demonize some segment of the population that they disfavor.
I want to get your explanation. You did this write-up in response to Francesca Hong, I mentioned earlier, the DSA candidate for governor in Wisconsin. And, I mean, it deals with the canards that people like her are spewing so as to sort of talk around her support for abolishing police or defunding the police and decarceration and all of these other platform planks for DSA. And one of the, I mean, it's remarkable to me that we have to go through this again and again and again, but I mean, our such a large segment of the electorate is basically policy illiterate. We do have to. But one of the things that you addressed, I thought very effectively, as you do on these topics, is the suggestion, because it was just made by our mayor, Brandon Johnson, the other day, that poverty causes crime.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is one of the sort of, primary planks of the left's positions on criminal justice, is this idea that, well, we don't really need enforcement, which they don't like, right? Because they don't like the disparities that are involved. They don't like how it looks on camera. They call it oppressive, right? But they need a way around it. And the way that they argue that we can get away from enforcement is just to call crime a consequence of poverty. And if crime is in fact a consequence of poverty, which, by the way, it's not, then the solutions become really easy because all we need to do is spend more money. Little do they ever attempt to actually deal with reality. And this is really the kind of difference between the core difference between people on the left and people on the right. People on the right deal with the world as it is. People on the left deal with the world as they would like it to be. When the leftist says that poverty causes crime, that all we have to do to reduce crime is eliminate poverty, they are telling you that they have the solution to a problem that is proven intractable, which is to say that they have the solution to a problem in poverty that has characterized every single human society that has ever existed at every point throughout history. There has never been a society of human beings without poverty. There has never been a society of human beings without social inequality. And when you look at the evidence, what you find is that poverty isn't even a cause of serious crime, at least not violent crime, right? There's a moderately causal relationship between poverty and some categories of property offending, right? But the potential for crime reductions are marginal at best. The most socially costly crimes in America are crimes of violence, and anti-poverty programs have no effect on this. And we have lots and lots of evidence for this. There have been great studies utilizing what are called natural experiments where social welfare transfer programs are abruptly ended because they're not refunded, or where they're started, so we get to see their effect in the first year. And what researchers consistently find is that there's no impact on robbery. There's no impact on homicide. There's no impact on rape. Why? Well, because those crimes are not economically motivated by and large. They're motivated by the kinds of psychological antisocial dispositions that characterize violent criminals in the United States, which is one of the reasons why things like antisocial personality disorder are much more prevalent in prison populations than poverty is. It's one of the reasons why the vast majority of poor people are not criminals. It's one of the reasons why when you look at crime in America and poverty in America, what you find is something what's called poverty mismatch, right? There are groups of Americans that live in poverty at significantly higher rates than other groups of Americans, yet commit crime at significantly lower rates, right? If you take New York City, for example, the Asian American population in New York City has one of the highest poverty rates in the city, significantly higher than Black New Yorkers and Hispanic New Yorkers. Yet Asian New Yorkers commit crimes at significantly lower rates than their Black and Hispanic counterparts, right? That crime adversity mismatch completely upends that theory. What progressives want to get away from is the reality that enforcement works, right? One of the reasons that we're seeing crime go down in the cities where it's going down is because enforcement has returned by and large, right? You have more people making arrests. You have the federal government coming in and helping out. You have police departments reasserting themselves. You have prison and jail populations growing.
Rafael Mangual, Senior Fellow and Head of Research for the Manhattan Institute's Policing and Public Safety Initiative, author of Criminal Injustice, What the Push for Mass Decarceration and Depolicing Gets Wrong and Who It Hurts Most. Criminal Injustice is the book. Rafael Mangual, the author. Rafael, thank you as always. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan. Be well.
You too. And you join us on the alphawealthgroup.com answer line.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer.
Your show keeps me alive during the week. There's nobody I'd rather listen to between 5 and 9 in the morning than you guys.
On AM 560, The Answer.
Hi, guys.